Well, I don't really care much about the Aussie male stereotypes that surround me, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I'm trying to express myself, and like, it's just, you know what I mean? The enigmatic Dan Clarke. Tonight we tell his story, the twists and the turns, and his failed marriage at such a young age. Dan Clarke is the musical genius who gave it away for his true passion, acting. But Dan's life has not always been easy, and on this program, we hear his story. Born in Sydney, Australia, Dan was brought up in Greenwich, the eldest of four. As a child, he was plagued by strange facial skin diseases which would appear without warning and cause a great deal of discomfort. But soon Dan would leave this all behind him and begin a life of performance. The first example of Dan's entrance into the public eye was in a magazine publication, Bebe. Dan was a child model, and it was clear that he enjoyed his job. He would never turn back, soaking up the limelight in an innocent display of exhibitionism. At age 12, Dan's life would change forever. Talent out, Dan record contract with Sony Music. 2 days in the studio and a 6-week video clip shoot, Dan wrote and produced a hit song that made its debut at #1 on the Australian charts.
If you do want me, give me a little sugar. If you don't.
His success was phenomenal. Some say that the success went to his head. His second song, another original, never got above 56 on the charts. Dan had lost his touch and his fame. Dan's life moved along at a rapid rate, and before he knew it, he was through primary school and began his education as a high school student. Even at this age, Dan was still performing, and became one of the founding members of the famed North Sydney Boys drama production company. During his schooling, Dan worked in the produce section of Woolworths to make ends meet. The money he made from his record sales squandered on Redskins and Warheads.
I was hardworking, it was good. I think he had a lot of potential in the industry, but obviously he took a different path.
Dan's life went downhill. As he grew older, he discovered self-abuse.
Yeah, well, everyone goes through a stage in their life where they try batting off. Hey, I went through a stage where I batted off. Didn't really like it.
Probably worst of all, Dan discovered alcohol, and as a result, lost his supreme physique and went from this to this. Dan checked into the Betty Ford Clinic where he met one of his greatest friends, Matthew Lipson Green.
Yes, well, I met Dan, must have been 3 years ago, 4, 5, a few years ago, and it was actually in the Betty Ford Clinic because I don't know if you know, but I used to be heavily into drugs, and well, I'm off them now. I haven't touched them for years, and anyway, we're in the Betty Ford Clinic, and we're getting some good treatment, some electroshock, and some hydrotherapy, and I actually met Dan in the pool. He did a fart and bubbles went everywhere, and I thought he was all right. So we started chatting, and from that we formed the Brewery Boys and went on to fantastic careers, and I've never looked back.
And so the Brewery Boys were born in the spring of 1998. Dan re-signed to the Sony label, and their first single, Come On Aussie, was an instant success. Being ashamed of the way he looked, Dan refused to make a video for the song, and these are the only photos that exist of Dan during the Brewery Brothers period. In the following autumn, the world was shocked when the B-Boys broke up, citing unreconcilable differences. One song, and $45 million later, Dan was back in the limelight, and back on track with his music career.
Well, you know, after the Texaco tour, I thought the band lacked a bit, and I thought that, Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm laughing here, but I'm just thinking the first time we talked with Dan, he was on the phone. He was so excited, you know. He just talked.
Well, he was very keen. Yes.
Yeah, he just talked to Richard Harney.
Richard Harney.
No, that's quite a funny story.
It was
the air stewardess asked him what his name was. Anyway, we just talked to him. He talked to Richard Harney, and they'd come up with a technique project, and a technique project is something new that Dan had brought to the scene.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen anyone come to us before with a technique project.
Never had a technique project on this show before, and this is a show. And he came through the door, spilt wine on the manager, and we had the meeting 2 days later, and we still got the contract. So, you know, hats off to you, Dan.
Dan's new album, Feeling Up the Moonlight, sold over 300 million copies worldwide. But as quickly as Dan had reached his musical peak, he gave it away, vowing that he would never write another song as long as he lived. Hollywood had seen his work and wanted to capitalize on it. Basically, what I've worked on with Dan Clarke over the past few years, a few lesser-known films such as Pulp Fiction, Fight Club. We did a bit on Superman. He was great as Superman. He's also been an extra in the cast of Passions. He's an incredible actor, and he's just one that I would really like to work with more in the future. And so, once again, Dan is on top, showing that with a lot of talent, anyone can make it to the big time. Oh yeah, and his marriage failed as well. Look, I mean, it's just like, I think that sometimes, like, art imitates life, right? And, you know, it's like, that you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I just believe that, you know what I mean?